Hello friends, what's up? It's Jaime here. Welcome back to another episode of the Mission to Martius vlogs. Mission to Martius is a fantasy adventure audio drama that I'm currently in the process of developing, and these vlogs are meant to serve as a behind the scenes look into that development. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys a bit of the Pinterest boards that I created for each of the significant locations in Mission to Martius. Renea, which is the world that Mission to Martius is set in, is a pretty big world. I mentioned this in my Meet the Characters vlog, but there are really only 4 major locations in the world that you guys need to know for this first installment of Mission to Martius, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I'm going to tell you guys a bit about each location's background, and then I'm going to show you the reference pictures that I got from Pinterest. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Just as a little refresher, once again, Renea is the fictional world that Mission to Martius is set in. This is a bit of an old and semi-outdated picture of Renea. It was done by my friend Amelia, also known as lenmana_ on Instagram, but it still captures what Renea looks like generally, so I will be referencing this picture for the sake of this video. So Renea has this barrier that separates the western and eastern hemispheres of the planet. The white ring that you see is what the barrier looks like from space, but up close, the barrier actually resembles more of an impassable mountain range. I can't talk about the specifics of the barrier without spoiling huge parts of the story, so for now, that's all you need to know about that. Again, to recap what I said in my Meet the Characters video, Renea is home to 2 main races, humans and fairies, and historically, humans and fairies have been at odds with each other for hundreds of years. Now, the story of Mission to Martius takes place in Renea's western hemisphere, and there are 6 human kingdoms in the western hemisphere of Renea. There is Harmonia, Sapente, Fortis, Presidium, Potestatum, and Martius. There are also 2 large fairy societies. These aren't kingdoms, they're ruled by councils instead of monarchies. So there's the Enchanted Cove, also known as the birthplace of fairies, and Fae Portum. And the 2 main kingdoms that you need to know about for now are Harmonia and Martius, and the main fairy society that you need to know about is the Enchanted Cove. So starting with Harmonia, Harmonia is the youngest of the kingdoms. In Renea, historically, Harmonia has always been pro-fairy, wanting humans and fairies to live together in harmony, and it is home to our 6 main characters. Many of the locations in Renea, from the kingdoms to the smaller villages, all have a medieval times, medieval era inspired aesthetic, and Harmonia is a perfect example of that. I've always known that I really wanted Harmonia to have that medieval kingdom inspired feel, and I'm very aware that medieval aesthetics are quite overused for fantasy worlds. I know, I'm sorry that I'm also feeding into that. I'm just such a sucker for medieval aesthetics. Here are some of the pictures of what I imagine the streets of Harmonia will look like with the houses. These specific house designs are really what I've always imagined when it comes to Mission to Martius and Harmonia. I also love this rooftop picture because I can perfectly imagine the scenes that will take place here. The same with this picture, with what feels like what could kind of be this back alley. And here are some concepts for what the Harmonian Castle will look like. I feel like the actual Harmonian Castle will be more of a combination of these images because I'm not really sold on one or the other being the sole reference for the Harmonian Castle. Okay, I couldn't find a reference for this because most of the references that I tried to see if I could use, they looked like they were AI art. I didn't really know for certain if they were, but just to, be on the safe side, I'll just describe to you what I was trying to find a reference of. So Harmonia, as a kingdom where humans and fairies live together, it really is mostly home to, in terms of the types of fairies that live there, it's home to several different types of fairies, but mostly flora fairies, namely Rosemary Hyacinth, who was the former Flora fairy representative of the Enchanted Cove Council. And so it's really important to me that Harmonia is just kind of filled with flowers. I really want there to just be flowers everywhere to show and to really drive home that there are a lot of flora fairies here that live here. But yeah, so just imagine roses and carnations and lilies and maybe peonies. Let's see, what other kind of flowers? Ooh, tulips. Oh, just flowers everywhere. I already know that there's definitely gonna be a lot of flower stands with like fairies selling flowers, and I just think it's gonna look really, really beautiful. So I'm very, very excited for that. Okay, moving on, we're gonna talk about a location that I haven't actually mentioned yet in any of these videos because there wasn't really a place for it yet. But next, we're gonna talk about Lumios Village. This is an approximation of where Harmonia is on the Renea map. And this is an approximation of where Lumios Village is. And then there's also Martius over there. In addition to the 6 human kingdoms and the Enchanted Cove and Fey Portum, Renea's Western Hemisphere is also home to a plethora of human and fairy villages scattered across the hemisphere, and Lumios Village is one of them. Lumios is a small village home to a majority light fairy population that is located southwest of Harmonia. Lumios Village is actually where the inciting incident of our story takes place, and this happens when they request for aid from Harmonia and the Enchanted Cove Council to investigate what happened to the fairies that have gone missing from the village. Similar to Harmonia, the aesthetics of Lumios have that medieval village feel, but with more of a countryside setting. Lumios is a farming village, so I really wanted the references to capture that. So there are a lot of cottages. You see that there are the farm areas. I just love like this, again, this countryside feel. I also love that in some of these pictures, you can see the mountains in the background, which checks out with Lumios being close to Harmonia, which is pretty close to the barrier. And Martius also has some natural mountains. So like depending on which side of Lumios you're looking at, you're probably going to see some mountains in the distance. Speaking of which, next we are moving on to Martius, for which Mission to Martius gets its name. Where Harmonia has been historically pro-fairy, Martius is notorious for being anti-fairy. There's sort of this like saying in Mission to Martius that fairies who go to Martius never return. Martius is much more of a gritty, darker kingdom than Harmonia because it's really associated with war and death. And so while Martius has that similar medieval aesthetic to Harmonia, I wanted the references to reflect that it's definitely a darker and gloomier setting. So yeah, most of these references are a lot darker, like in terms of lighting, and it's clear that the kingdom is a bit like dirtier, I guess, for lack of a better word, which is really due to the queen's tendency to neglect the welfare of her people. And so like architecturally, Martius is very similar to Harmonia, but like if you put Harmonia through like a grayscale. Unlike Harmonia, I actually have a very clear idea of what I want the Martius Palace to look like. But before I show you the reference pictures for the Martius Palace, I want to make it very, very clear that I'm purely using these pictures for like architectural inspiration. I'm not trying to imply in any kind of way that this location is like has anything nefarious going on or whatever. I'm purely pulling inspiration from the architectural design. So the references that I'm using for the Martius Palace are pictures of the Sanctuary of Las Lajas, which is a Catholic church in Colombia. What I really want to borrow from like the architectural design of this church is like, because it's on a mountain, it has this really cool bridge. And I also love this like bottom part of the building. I feel like that's really interesting. The actual design of the Martius Palace will definitely look more medieval to, again, kind of go with the whole like medieval inspired theme. But again, I just want to take the layout of the bridge and the bottom part of the building as inspiration. All right, our final location is the Enchanted Cove, also known as the birthplace of all fairies and home to the Enchanted Cove Council. While not every fairy, like in all of Renea, lives in the Enchanted Cove is home to fairies of all types. Admittedly, you're not gonna get to see that much like inside the Enchanted Cove in this first season of Mission to Martius, so this is really gonna be more of just like a little sneak peek of like the vibes of the Enchanted Cove, but I promise that you will get to like actually see inside it in later installments. And so to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of like the vibes of the Enchanted Cove, here is this picture of a cave somewhere in Mexico, according to Google. This cave is what I imagine the meeting place for the Enchanted Cove Council to look like. It's so beautiful and serene, and something about it just also feels like kind of magical. Maybe that's just me, but I don't really know how to explain it, but I just love this image. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of the Mission to Martius vlogs. Like always, if you guys have any specific questions about Mission to Martius, please leave them down below in the comments. I will do my best to configure them into a future vlog. In the next vlog, I'm going to be talking about the fairies and magic of Mission to Martius. That should be coming out in mid-March because I couldn't fit it into my schedule for February, but stay tuned for that. Once again, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.